In this video, I'd like to talk about adding materials or textures to SketchUp surfaces. So I have a model set up here and it has a seating arrangement that I've downloaded from the 3D warehouse. And we've got some walls with a wainscoting and floor. And we're going to add some materials to each of these surfaces. I'm going to start by going over to my default tray, and I'm just going to lock it open here. And I already have my materials panel open here, but if it's not open, you can find it in the default tray here, and you can just open it up by clicking that little arrow, and it will open right up. So in here, if I click on this little down arrow right here, SketchUp shows me a whole bunch of different options of materials that have been preloaded into SketchUp. It's not a huge selection of materials, and you can add your own materials to SketchUp, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But it's a good start, and it has some stuff that is definitely usable. Here's some stone here. There are just plain old colors here. Named colors. Now, I generally like, if I'm just using plain colors, something that doesn't have a pattern, and I'm going to be post-processing in Photoshop, I generally like to add that color in Photoshop because you get a lot more control. One of the things you should remember is that when you are converting a SketchUp file to Photoshop, you're going to lose a little bit of the vibrancy that putting the material in directly in Photoshop would give you. And there's ways around that, and we can do create some adjustment layers in Photoshop, and we'll talk about that when we go to Photoshop, but it's just something to keep in mind. So I'm going to just sort of, there's a number of bricks here, and I'm just going to pick this brick antique one. And when I click on it, you'll notice that that brick appears up here. This tells me that this is the active material that is going to be added to my SketchUp model. And you'll notice that my cursor now has turned into a paint bucket. So my cursor is now ready to paint that pattern onto whatever surface I'd like to do that, to put it on. And if I just click and put it on, you'll notice that it has put it on a lot of stuff here. And that's really not what I want. I'm just going to hit Control Z to undo that. Why did it do that? Well, the reason is, if I go back to my selection tool and I select that wall, you'll notice that it's part of a large component. And if I apply a material to a large component, it will apply that material to every single surface on that component if the default material, which is nothing, is used on that component. So in this case, what my intent is to have a painted wainscoting down here, and I'm going to put a brick surface on this wall back here. So what I need to do is I need to go into edit mode of this component. I double clicked on it, and sometimes you have nested components in your model, so you have to keep drilling down and keep selecting it until you are able to select the surface, the single surface that you want to apply the texture to. And I know that I have that selected because when I click on it, it's highlighted with the little blue dots. So now I can go over to my paint bucket tool here, or I can click on the active material here. Either way will get me the paint bucket, and when I click on it, my wall now has the brick pattern that I'd like to use. Very simple to do. I'm going to do it again for the floor. So first, what I'll do is I'll select I'm going to put a wood floor on there. So I'm going to select wood down here. And there are a few woods here, not a lot. And you'll notice that SketchUp gives you a couple different kinds. First, there's just, a cherry wood or corkboard or bamboo. And these are veneers. This is something that you might apply to a piece of furniture or, a table or something like that, which is different than wood flooring. Flooring is in a plank pattern, and if I apply that, it will look like flooring. You wouldn't want to put like a wood veneer on your floor. It would just look weird and unrealistic. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double click and keep double clicking until I have the flooring highlighted. Once I have the flooring highlighted, I know that that is the floor, that is the surface that my wood flooring material is going to be applied to. So I've just selected this wood floor light here, and I'm just going to click on it, and it put that pattern right on my floor. I can choose another one. Here's a wood floor parquet. I've got a parquet floor on. Here's just a generic wood floor. I guess for now, I'll use that generic wood floor. I'm not really happy with any of these, so what I might do is I might look to customize this wood floor, and again, I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. So let's add another material to these chairs here. So again, I'm going to go down into my materials window here, and let's see, carpet, fabric, and leather. So let's look at that. Here's a red brown leather. So why don't we try that, and we'll put it on these chairs here. Obviously, I have this whole thing selected, and it's all selected at once, so I know that that's a component. So I'm gonna drill down until I have the actual sides of the chair selected. There I have the sides and the top of it selected. And then again, I will go and click on the active material here, and there I've got a wood floor. Now, why didn't it select the back and the seat of the chair? And you'll notice it selected the other chairs too. It painted those as well. Why is that? Because these are all components, and whatever modifications I make to one component, it will make to the other same components in my model. But so this chair is comprised of a number of components, it looks like. One is the back and sides of the chair, and then another component is the seat of the chair, and another component is this back cushion. So again, I'm going to just sort of select that, and then I'll select this until I have the whole chair selected. Good. So there I have some leather on my chair, but I'm not really happy with this leather. I think it's a little dark for what I want to do. So what I can do is I can edit this texture. And over again in my materials window here, there's two tabs here. There's a select and an edit, and I can go over to the edit. And the first easy thing I can do is I can, just with this bar here, I can raise the increase the lightness of the material until it's something that I'm a little more happy with, and that's probably a better material for me. If ever I want to go back to the default color, I can go to reset color and it'll zoom right back. Another thing that I can do is I've got the color wheel here, and I can, maybe I want, bottle green chairs or something. Um, I have the ability to change the color of the texture here too, but I don't want that. I want something a little bit like this. So that's what I'm going to use. And there we go. Zoom back to my view. So if we want to add a custom material to our palette of materials, it's relatively easy to do, but the thing that you need to remember is you need a tileable texture or a seamless texture, a texture that when it repeats isn't going to give you that checkerboard grid-like feel when it gets put on, whatever surface in your model you're going to be putting it on. So there's a couple ways to get them. You can, just do a search for a tileable texture, tileable flooring or wall covering or whatever it is that you want to add. There's also a number of websites that you can go to, and this is one of the websites that I like to use, the SketchUp texture site. It's sketchuptextureclub.com, and they have a plethora of different kinds of um, uh, materials here, paving and plaster and roofing and all kinds of stuff, including a whole section just on wood flooring. And when you select the wood floor, there's a whole bunch of them that you can select. It gives you a preview of what that texture is going to look like, and you have two options. You can have a really beautiful full resolution image, and you can have a smaller image. And for what I'm using, the smaller image is going to be perfectly fine, suffice just perfectly fine. So what I've done is in my materials folder on my computer, I downloaded a few of them. This is a medium parquet, and here's a darker one. I wasn't sure exactly which one to use, and they're very easy to switch out. Once you do one, you can do a whole bunch of them. So let's see how we create a new material in SketchUp. Okay, so let's create a custom material and apply it to the floor here. So I'm going to go over to my materials palette here, and you'll notice that right now I have my leather material that I applied to my chairs here as the active material. And that's fine, and you could create a new material using that leather. But generally what I like to do is I like to start with the default material, which is no material at all. And there is a little button here, and if I click on it, I am now set to the default material. The default material is what all of these materials, all of these unpainted materials in my finishes in my model are. They're sort of set by default to default material. So I want to create a new material. So what I've done is I've clicked on the little default material button, and right above it is a create material button. And I'm going to click on that, and I get a create material dialog box. So the first thing I want to do is I want to give my new material a name, and I'm going to call it a custom wood floor. And what we're going to do is, and I could change the color if I just want a solid color. I can use the color wheel or RGB colors, whatever I'd like. But what I'm interested in is using a texture image. And that image will be the image that I just downloaded, that tileable texture that I downloaded from the internet and saved to my computer. So I'm going to click Use Texture Image, and I'm going to get the a dialog box that comes up that asks me where I want, which material I want to use. And so I'm in my materials folder, and these are the ones that I downloaded. I'm just going to choose this medium parquet. And you'll notice that I have the medium parquet here up on this little thumbnail here, and I'll just hit OK. And now that is my active color. So if I go to my selection tool, and double click, drill down so that I have my flooring selected, and I click on my custom wood flooring, my paint bucket appears as my cursor, and I click on it, and my flooring has turned to my new custom floor. So when I look at it, this floor seems kind of small, this pattern. So we can edit that. Let's go over to the Edit tab here. And down here, here's the texture that I'm using. Down here is the size of the repeat of the pattern. So that pattern is 10 7/16 wide by a foot high. So if I change this, I can just start playing with this until it's something that I like. Let's try 2 feet. Well, right there, that's a little better. That I think is going to be more realistic looking. But I can make it 4 feet. Really big. Maybe 4 feet is good. Yeah, let's leave it at 4 feet. So this gives you the opportunity to play with what the size of that spacing of your texture is. I can also, of course, I can change the darkness and tweak the coloring of it, but I just want to reset that color to back where it is because I think that's going to be fine. And go back to my view. And there I very easily changed my my flooring texture. Okay, so let's say I want to add more of this leather material to maybe this sofa over here. How do I do that? Well, I can go into my materials palette here, and I'm going to be looking in model. I can go in this drop down and I'll select in model, and this gives me a list of all of the materials that are currently in my model. And then I can hover around and find the material that I want to, that I used over here, and use it again in the model. But there's an easier way to do that. And right up here is a little eyedropper tool, and I hover over it. It says Sample Paint. And when I click on it, my cursor turns into the eyedropper, and I can just select that leather. And you'll notice that my active material has immediately turned to that leather red-brown. And you'll notice that my cursor has turned to the paint bucket tool. It's ready to apply that material. Another way I can do it is with the paint bucket tool selected, I can hold the Alt key. And when I hold the Alt key, my cursor again turns into the eyedropper. And this time I'll select the brick wall back here. I select it, and over in my materials palette here, again, my material is changed to the Brick Antique 01, and I could apply that to whatever surface or material in my model that I want. But I'm going to apply the leather, so again, I'll hold Alt, my cursor turns into the eyedropper, I select it, and when I click on this, everything has changed, right? Because it's all one giant component. So I'll go to the selection tool, double click, until I have those surfaces that I want selected. Then I can go over to my materials, select it, and add that material to whatever object or surface that I want.